The fog wrapped around the rusted chain-link fence like fingers gripping too tightly, muffling the distant city hum as I swept my flashlight beam across the overgrown lot on my nightly patrol. Shadows clung to the crumbling warehouses on the edge of the sprawl, where weeds choked the cracked asphalt, and the air hung heavy with the scent of damp decay and forgotten industry. Insomnia had turned these hours into my reluctant domain, sharpening every creak of settling metal and every rustle of wind through abandoned lots into prickles on the back of my neck. I'd traded wrenches for a uniform after the factory shut down, figuring a quiet gig watching over nothing much would suit a practical guy like me. No time for ghost stories or the nonsense muttered in these neglected corners. But tonight, the silence felt wrong, too absolute, as if the night itself held its breath, waiting for me to notice. That's when I spotted it, crumpled in the shadows by the livestock pen, a stray dog twisted into something unnatural. The air on the city's ragged edge was thick with the scent of rusting fences and the faint rot of manure, but tonight it carried a fouler undercurrent, like spoiled meat left to fester. The dog, God, it wasn't recognizable as a dog anymore, lay hunched against the wooden slats, its body contorted in ways no living thing should bend. Ribs jutted at impossible angles, as if some invisible force had wrung it like a dish rag, squeezing the life right out. Its fur was matted and dull, clumped with dirt and what looked like dried ichor. But the worst part, the part that churned my stomach, was the absence. No blood, not a drop pooling on the hard-packed dirt beneath it. Just pale, almost translucent flesh stretched taut over bones, and those glassy eyes staring at nothing, wide and empty like they'd seen the devil himself. I froze in the middle of my night patrol route, the beam of my flashlight trembling in my grip as it danced over the corpse. My breath came in shallow bursts, fogging the chilly air. I swept the light across the ground, searching for any sign. Coyote prints, the deep gouges of a big cat's claws, even tire tracks from some sick bastard's joyride. But there was nothing. Only swirling fog clung to the earth like a shroud, while a bone-deep chill sank into me, prickling the hairs on my neck. It felt like eyes bored into me from the dark, watching, waiting. My radio crackled to life, but my voice emerged hoarse when I thumbed the button.
Base. This is Rivera. Got a animal carcass out by the East Pen. Looks like a wild animal attack. No signs of the perp.
Even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. This wasn't right. As I backed away slowly, boots crunching on gravel, the silence shattered with a distant rustle. Too deliberate, too close, like something slithering through the underbrush with purpose. I spun, light slashing through the mist, but whatever it was had melted back into the night. The news the next morning blamed coyotes, or some freak disease striking farms on the city's edge. Mutilated cows drained dry, their bodies hollowed out like husks. Reporters droned on about rabies outbreaks or bold pack hunters, but it didn't sit right. My coworkers at the security firm muttered about old legends over lukewarm coffee in the break room, speaking of a blood-sucking beast roused by urban sprawl encroaching on sacred ground. "Chupacabra's cousin," one guy joked, but his eyes weren't laughing. Bullshit, I thought. I'm an ex-mechanic with grease-stained hands and a no-nonsense attitude, not some superstitious fool jumping at shadows. I'd traded wrenches for a badge after the auto shop folded, figuring night patrols offered steady pay. But that mutilated dog haunted me. Insomnia gnawed at my edges, turning every shadow in my cramped apartment into a threat. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, replaying the scene, the glassy eyes, the unnatural twist of limbs, until dawn bled through the blinds. A week later, screams ripped through the alley during my shift, piercing the monotonous hum of distant traffic and the occasional blare of a car horn. They weren't the usual drunken yells or lovers' quarrels. These were raw, guttural, like someone being torn apart from the inside. I bolted over, boots pounding the cracked pavement, heart slamming against my ribs like a trapped animal. The alley was a narrow gash between decaying brick buildings, littered with overflowing dumpsters and the stink of garbage marinating in rainwater. I found him there, a homeless guy I'd seen before, slumped against a rusted dumpster, his threadbare coat splayed open like wings. His neck was punctured with 2 neat holes, precise as surgical incisions. The skin around them puckered and pale, but his whole body looked deflated, skin like parchment stretched over a skeleton, eyes wide with frozen horror, mouth agape in a silent scream. No blood sprayed the walls, no pools soaked into the grime, just those wounds and a faint trail of fading footprints that melted into the sewer grate at the alley's end, dissolving like smoke. The cops showed up eventually, flashing lights cutting through the fog, shrugging it off as a mugging gone wrong. "Junkie probably owed money," one said, not even bothering to look closely. But I knew better. Those holes weren't from a knife. They were too clean, too deliberate. Paranoia clawed deep after that, a constant itch under my skin. The attacks crept closer, edging into the chaos of low-rent streets where graffiti-tagged walls and flickering neon signs blurred the line between safety and squalor. I'd drive my routes with the windows cracked, listening for any unnatural rustle, my mind replaying the screams on a loop. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by jittery vigilance and cups of black coffee that burned going down. I couldn't shake the gnawing certainty that something was hunting us, something that didn't belong in the rational world. I started poking around in my off hours, digging through online forums and faded newspaper clippings in the public library's musty archives. That's when I confided in Eliana, my next-door neighbor, who was a tough single mom with calloused hands from slinging plates at the all-night diner down the block. Her apartment smelled of fresh tortillas and faint lavender soap, a stark contrast to my barren space. "Wesley, you look like hell," she said one evening, wiping her hands on a dish towel as her kid, little Thomas, played with toy cars in the corner. I told her about the dog, the homeless man, the creeping dread. Her family stories were laced with rural folklore from her abuela's tales, creatures that lurked in the shadows, feeding on the unwary. "It's not just stories," she said, eyes hardening. "Out in the villages, They say things wake up when the land is poisoned. She joined me for her kid's sake, her protective fire burning bright. One more disappearance, and it could be Thomas out there alone. Eliana pulled in Jordan, the wiry hacker from the tech repair shop, barely out of his teens with a mop of unkempt hair and fingers that danced over keyboards like extensions of his body. He tapped into city cams with a grin, pulling feeds from traffic lights and security drones. "This is next level creepy," he muttered, screens glowing in his cluttered basement setup and reflecting off his glasses. Then there was old Mr. Hale, the historian from the local museum, a stooped figure with wire-rimmed spectacles and a voice like rustling pages. He spun tales of indigenous curses without the woo, grounding them in history. Tribal lands desecrated by factories and highways, ancient spirits twisted by progress. We pieced it together amid the vanishing folks. A delivery driver gone without a trace, his van abandoned with the engine still running. A jogger found pale and lifeless in the park, her running shoes laced tight. No struggle marks, just those same telltale punctures. Our stakeouts paid off, though they frayed our nerves to the breaking point. We'd huddled in Eliana's beat-up sedan or Jordan's van, parked in shadowed lots overlooking potential hotspots. Abandoned warehouses, dimly lit underpasses. The city at night was a labyrinth of humming streetlights and distant sirens, the air heavy with exhaust and unspoken fears. One foggy evening, I glimpsed it, sleek and humanoid, but wrong in every way. Limbs too long and jointed unnaturally, blending seamlessly with the flickering shadows. It moved like liquid shadow, mimicking the horns and chatter of the urban din to lure prey. A honk here, a muffled laugh there, drawing the unwary closer. My breath caught as it slunk through an alley, its form shifting subtly, camouflaging against the brick. We followed at a distance, hearts pounding, but it vanished into the subway grates, leaving only that faint, oily residue on the metal. One night, we holed up in an abandoned warehouse on the industrial fringe, the place reeking of mold and forgotten machinery. Dust motes danced in our flashlight beams as we set up our gear. Cameras, motion sensors, anything to catch a glimpse. Its hum vibrated through the walls first, a low, resonant thrum that set my teeth on edge, as if the building itself were alive and hungry. My pulse raced as I rigged floodlights to distract it, wiring them to a generator with shaking hands. The creature emerged from the rafters, a silhouette of elongated limbs and glowing eyes, its skin rippling like oil on water. It lunged at Jordan, who yelped and fired a scavenged flare gun. The burst of light sent it skittering back with a hiss that sounded like tearing metal. Close calls piled up after that, each one chipping away at my skepticism, cracking the facade of the rational man I'd built. Desperate for answers, we delved deeper into the library's forgotten stacks, the air thick with the scent of aged paper and dust. Hale led us to yellowed manuscripts and grainy photos revealing an ancient parasite, born from the earth's dark underbelly, twisted by factory runoff that had poisoned the waters. It wasn't a myth. It was biological, a creature evolved in decay, glowing faintly in toxic sludge, bonding with hosts to feed on blood and life essence. The texts described it as a chameleon of the shadows, adapting to environments and thriving in the polluted veins of modern cities. Jordan's eyes lit up with manic energy. "We blast this online. Make it viral. People need to know." But Eliana urged caution, her voice trembling as she thought of her boy, safe at home, but never truly out of reach. Hale pushed for rituals, ancient wards drawn from indigenous lore, symbols etched in salt and blood to bind the thing. Nightmares struck hard after that, vivid and unrelenting. I'd wake in a cold sweat, convinced its eyes glowed from the sink drains, yellow and malevolent, or hearing its hum vibrate in the walls like a heartbeat. Sleep eluded me, leaving me hollow-eyed and jumpy, snapping at shadows by day. Then, in the subway tunnels beneath the bustling streets, it lunged without warning. We'd ventured down there following Jordan's cam footage, the air thick with fetid dampness and the stench of stagnant water mixed with urine. Graffiti-covered walls closed in, our flashlights slicing narrow paths through the gloom. It erupted from a side tunnel, skin shifting like oil over the colorful tags, blending and distorting them into nightmarish patterns. Its long, serrated claws slashed my arm, igniting a line of fire that burned deeper than any cut should. Blood welled as the wound pulsed with unnatural heat, throbbing as if infected by something alive. I staggered back, firing my pistol wildly, the shots booming like thunder in the confined space. Eliana dragged me out, her face pale but determined, while Jordan hacked the tunnel lights to strobe, buying us time. Back at base, we mapped its patterns in Hale's cluttered study, poring over printouts and screens under a single desk lamp that cast long shadows. It favored the city's underbelly, sewers, subways, forgotten basements, emerging at night to hunt. The twist hit us like a gut punch. It was spawning, infesting rats and strays that scurried through the streets, their eyes glazing over with a vacant stare. We discovered nests in alleyways, clusters of twisted forms writhing in the dark, spreading like a plague. Reports trickled in, pets vanishing, kids talking about glowing eyes in storm drains. The city was turning into a breeding ground, and we were the only ones who knew. Desperate, we armed ourselves with UV lights from Jordan's tech hoard, harsh beams that weakened it, per Hale's lore, and etched symbols onto makeshift weapons. Hale muttered incantations under his breath, his hands steady despite his age. We descended into the forgotten reservoir beneath the city's outskirts, a labyrinth of flooded tunnels. The entrance was a rusted grate hidden in an overgrown lot. As we slipped inside, the air grew thick and oppressive, water sloshing from our ankles to knees. The tunnels swarmed with its offspring, scuttling horrors, bloated and twisted rats, fur slick with oily sheen, eyes reflecting our lights like tiny suns. They nipped at our heels, a chittering horde forcing us to swing bats and fire flares to clear paths. It ambushed us in a larger chamber, the ceiling dripping with stalactites. Hale went down first, the creature's tendrils wrapping around him like living vines, draining him dry before our eyes. His skin withered in seconds, a gasp escaping his lips as life fled, guilt tearing through me like shrapnel. I'd led him here, promised we'd end it, "Run!" I shouted to Eliana and Jordan, my voice raw as I fired UV bursts to hold it back. We pushed deeper into the cavern, the walls narrowing, water rising to our waists. I rigged the supports with charges Jordan had wired, old dynamite from a construction contact, setting timers with numb fingers, the wound on my arm burning fiercer, sinking with some internal rhythm. But it cornered me, alone in a dead-end chamber, the others separated by a collapsing tunnel. Its tendrils pulsed with stolen life, glowing faintly in the dark, veins of pilfered blood thrumming beneath its shifting skin. The air hummed with its presence, a vibration that resonated in my bones, and my wound throbbed in rhythm. The creature loomed, its form a grotesque tapestry of urban rot and ancient malice, elongated limbs unfurling like cables from a derelict machine, eyes burning with the same glassy hunger I'd first seen in that mutilated dog. My back pressed against the slick cavern wall, water swirling at my chest, the rigged charges ticking down in the distance. Fear clawed up my throat, but so did fury, for Hale, drained and discarded, for Eliana and Jordan, fighting somewhere in the tunnels, for every hollowed-out victim this thing had claimed in the shadows of the sprawl. My mechanic's hands, steady from years of fixing what was broken, gripped the detonator. "Not tonight," I growled, thumbing the switch. The explosion rocked the chamber with a deafening roar, sending cracks spiderwebbing through the supports. Debris plummeted, pining the creature under a cascade of concrete and rusted rebar, its tendrils thrashing wildly as floodwaters surged in, burying it deeper in the murky depths, a fitting grave for a curse born of poison land. Its hum faltered and died, swallowed by the rushing water that symbolized the reburial of what should have stayed hidden. I staggered out, the wound on my arm pulsing less insistently, pulling myself through collapsing passages until I found Eliana and Jordan, their faces smeared with grime, but alive, crushing the last of the offspring with improvised torches. We clawed our way to the surface as dawn broke, emerging into the foggy outskirts, battered and gasping. The city's hum returning like a hesitant heartbeat. The attacks stopped cold. The papers spun tales of a serial killer lost in a cave-in, but we knew the truth. We'd destroyed the evidence, halting the spread, sharing a nod of exhausted triumph as the sun burned away the mist. Eliana relocated with Thomas, seeking quieter streets. Jordan turned his hacks toward vigilante monitoring, eyes on the digital shadows. I quit the patrols, channeling my insomnia into chasing urban legends, a wrench in one hand and Hale's old manuscripts in the other. The wound scarred over, but it left me changed. Nights sharper, senses heightened, as if a faint infection lingered, urging vigilance against what adapts and hides in plain sight. Months later, life edged toward normalcy in my rundown apartment, the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles as I sipped coffee and scanned news feeds for anomalies. Peaceful, almost. But then reports trickled in. Distant farms hit again. Livestock drained dry under cover of fog. Alone in the dim light, I caught my reflection in the window, eyes faintly glowing, a thirst stirring deep within, The sprawl's silence felt wrong once more, too absolute. The night holding its breath as it had during that first foggy patrol, prickling the back of my neck with the weight of what I'd become. No longer practical, but the reluctant guardian of horrors that refused to die.
Hey guys, it's Malice here. I really appreciate you sticking around until the end of the story. I'm a one-man operation and trying my best to grow, so if you like what you just heard, please leave me a like. Subscribe if you want to hear more, and please send me any reading requests you might have. I'm always struggling to find new content. Thanks again, and stay scared.